may contain subject matter that some listeners may find disturbing or harmful. Audience discretion is advised.
All right. Hello, darlings, dears, and fellow queers, and welcome back to CBT in the TV. As always, I am Kacie, not Rachel.
And I am Rachel, not Kacie.
And this week, oh boy, friends, are we going to have a really great time as we dive right into Season 2, Episode 4 of Dance Moms. This one, Lifetime has titled No One Likes a Bully, but we're just going to call it No One Likes Any of This, because there is so much yikes in this episode. But before we get into that, we do need to check in with Rachel and Kacie's Jar of Fun. And Rachel, the question of the day is, what is your current favorite, and I know this is going to be hard to only pick one, current favorite show tune?
Right now, I have been binge listening to the Suffs soundtrack. So at any given moment, it's probably one of them, whichever one ends up stuck in my head.
That is understandable. Mine is currently You'll Be Back from Hamilton. And now we need to check in with our snacks and drinks rate. And we want to, before I forget, I want to make sure we invite all of our friends out there in listening land to make sure that they're feeding and hydrating themselves right along with us, because you are special and important and you deserve to be fed and hydrated. Rachel, what do you have today?
I have an M&M cookie ice cream sandwich. And I have agua in my emotional support water bottle with all of its fun stickers and a mustache.
Very nice. I am having a protein breakfast bar, and then I am also having water in my emotional support water bottle. And now that we are hydrated, we can not delay anymore and we get to jump right into things. So the episode opens with Abby calling everyone in for Pyramid again and telling them to hurry up because they've got a lot of work to do today. Then she congratulates them on another victorious weekend. Unfortunately, she immediately follows this up by saying that the girls may have won, but she still saw lots of mistakes and things that she needs to fix. Before we even get started on anyone's placement on the pyramid, she's already called out Paige, Nia, and Kendall for mistakes that were made during last week's group performance. Kendall and Nia's corrections are especially dubious because she calls out Nia for not making any mistakes at all, but also not doing anything that pulled her eye in a positive way. And then she calls out Kendall for doing part of the choreography exactly as it was given her, but the way that it was given to her didn't allow Abby to see her from advantage in the audience to give her better critiques in Pyramid this week. So she can't say whether or not she did the technical bit correctly. Like, ma'am, I need you to be so fucking for real right now. The narcissistic tendencies are so strong right out the gate this week.
I wonder if they only clipped those specific ones. I wonder if she gave feedback to everybody. But they because it didn't feel complete. Like when I listened to it, I was like, it feels like there should have been more there. Like it feels like she would have kept talking if it hadn't been cut.
Ooh, interesting.
Like, just with her prosody, it just sounded like she wasn't finished.
So I do listen to all the Dance Moms podcasts. However, the only one that goes through episodically is Back to the Bar. So unfortunately, I am only getting like Christy and Kelly's recollection, and no one is, 100% the best, most reliable narrator, especially when it comes to their own children. They're only going to remember like their own version of it. I will say that Kelly and Christy only did seem to remember this happening with Kendall, Nia, and Paige. So maybe she had more critiques for the whole group, or critiques that had to do with like maybe Kenzie's solo. I don't know. And even Kelly didn't say any more about like Paige's correction here. They did just particularly think that Nia and Kendall's were really weird. So I don't know, but I do think that that's really interesting. But the whole thing is odd because, again, we're not even at Pyramid yet. We've been called into Pyramid, but she hasn't started it. And we're already yelling at children for not even doing stuff wrong. I don't even know. Abby then makes a big deal out of pointing out that they will be going to a particular competition this weekend called Hollywood Vibe, where Abby says that all of the judges will be industry pros looking for the next big child star. However, again, according to the Back to the Bar podcast, the only thing that's special about this particular competition was that Abby and production had a specific kind of relationship with them. They were allowed to film. If you pay close attention during this episode, you'll see that they have a lot of footage of other group dances, other duos and trios. And as the show progressed, we got less and less of that because the competition community was starting to catch on to what Dance Moms was, and they didn't really want the cameras around all the time, and they definitely didn't want to allow for the setup of the booms and the floating cameras. They didn't want all of that. So they're giving Hollywood Vibe like this big promo and saying what a big deal Hollywood Vibe is and how many industry pros are there. But that they're only doing that because it benefits both sides. It's not accurate. Christy and Kelly both said that like Hollywood Vibe doesn't have any more industry pros than any other dance competition. All dance competitions are going to have someone obviously working in the dance industry. They all work in the dance industry or they don't work at dance competitions, but this was just quid pro quo. And then we get to head into Pyramid. Abby points to a headshot that is slightly removed from the rest of the group, and she says that she isn't going to even discuss this. And we all assume that this is just Brooke's placement on the pyramid. Abby begins talking about how the rest of the girls are placed in the pyramid for the week, and she reveals that the lowest spot on the actual, like, official pyramid has gone to Paige, which kind of also feeds into the idea that that other picture is Brooke, because the Highlands are always next to each other on the bottom, unless one of them has made it to the top. And she tells us in interview that the reason that Paige is at the bottom is because she does not apply corrections. And Abby tells Paige that she's going to have to work really hard to climb back up that ladder. Next on the pyramid is Nia, and Abby tells Nia that while she's been working very hard, she still needs to correct all of her technical issues. Next up is Kendall, and unsurprisingly, Kendall is still on probation. And while Kendall takes this very well, she just nods. Jill throws her head back, twists like in a half circle, you know, like I don't know, like a Disney character on a Disney sitcom, like Miley Cyrus and Hannah Montana having a bad day at school, like, and she goes, "Oh God," and it's so wacky. She's a TV character, but this is supposed to be reality. Like, it's so
like she's
weird.
writhing in the air.
Yes, it's like she's writhing, and she says, "Oh my God," all whiny, and Abby just tells Jill that it's going to be a long process. In an interview, Jill tells us that Kendall still being on probation is making her crazy. Like, you didn't need to tell us. We already got that bit, but thanks. Next on the pyramid is Kenzie, and Abby tells us that Kenzie was the overall high score winner in her age division last week, and she proved herself in the group the week before in the Bad Apples number. Well, Kenzie tells us in an interview that she knew that she could get higher on the pyramid this week because she did great. While this is happening, we get a glimpse of Chloe congratulating Kenzie in the pyramid lineup. She kind of like brushes Kenzie's cheek and then gives her a thumbs up with the sweetest smile. It is so darling, and I just, cute little baby best friends. Next on the pyramid is Maddie, and Abby tells Maddie that while she thought Maddie did great last week, oh well, I guess you still need something to work for. And now, I think this probably sounds like a really weird thing to say to Maddie, especially coming from Abby, except I don't think she's actually saying anything to Maddie. She's just directing it at her. I think production made Abby keep Maddie in the same spot again this week, and Abby is throwing a petulant little passive-aggressive tantrum at them. Unfortunately, the method of communication is a 9-year-old.
I was thinking that too, that like she's only there because she had to be, quote unquote, had to.
Because otherwise, none of what Abby says makes sense. It's so weird. Like, saying she still has something to work for, that'd be fine, but like oh well, I guess you still, like, it's the exact wording that I'm just like, what is that? Why did we think any of this show made sense the first time we watched it? At the top of the pyramid this week is Miss Chloe, and in an interview that sounds every bit as petulant as she sounded talking to Maddie, Abby says that she had to put Chloe at the top of the pyramid this week because she was the overall high score winner last week, and that's usually the person who has to be in that key position. And that it'll be up to Chloe whether or not she stays in that position or not. Again, I think Abby has some irrational fear of saying anything nice about Chloe without qualifying it. It's like a rabid animal and water. It's like hydrophobia. Back in Pyramid, she tells Chloe that she did something out there that made her mother cry, but she doesn't want Chloe to make her cry. She wants her to make her smile. Like, does Abby at all understand that she could have said, like, you impressed the judges, you won the overall, let's keep working on your technique and see what happens next? Like, that wouldn't be saying anything nice to Chloe either, but at least it would have been applicable and made some like a damn sense. Because what the fuck was the rest of that? You did something out there. You made your mother cry. I don't want you to make me cry. Make me smile. What the hell? Even for Abby, that's some Kathy level nonsense. Christy tells us that she thinks that this has to be hard for Melissa because Chloe's above Maddie on the pyramid. And then she uses her ice cream for everyone line again. And like Christy said on the Back to the Bar podcast that she wonders if it wasn't like just a replay from the week before. But I don't care. Either way, once again, I think we can celebrate the girls making it to the top of the pyramid. Take her out for ice cream. That's great. But why are we celebrating it just based on who they're above on the pyramid? Christy, if you really want Chloe and Maddie to stop being compared, you have to stop comparing them too. And this isn't you doing that. This was gross. And it was gross last week too. We move on to assignments, and Abby gives Chloe and Maddie a solo each before assigning a trio, which she says will feature Chloe, Maddie, and Kendall. Now, for those of us in the Dance Moms know, it is common knowledge that the standard trio for almost a decade at this point had been comprised of Chloe, Maddie, and Paige. And while Jill is clapping her hands and grinning wildly, Paige is telling us in an interview that she's been in this trio since she was 4, and she thinks she should probably still be in it, but that since Miss Abby is mad at her mom and at her sister, she's just using the trio to get back at them. And this is so, like, it's equally insightful and also so sad that any 11-year-old should know anything about this kind of stuff, let alone be able to put it into words so well.
That, and I mean, I think like knowing what we know about like dance and group cohesion, I think she's also potentially worried for her friends as well as for herself, because we know that like when you dance together, you learn all those like nuances, and like there's a lot of non-verbal communication that happens, and at this, like, it's kind of almost a rejection for her to be like, oh, 1, 2, oh, that's me too, and then it's not.
Like, I don't think Paige would have minded as much if the trio had been like, oh, we're gonna do Maddie, Nia, Kenzie. Like, if it had been a truly random thing, it would have been different. But Abby also makes the point of saying she wants to see if Kendall can hang with Maddie and Chloe. And this is another thing that the moms all thought was always so weird. It's like they all hang together in the group dance. And this is part of that narrative that production and Abby were always trying to push Abby more about Maddie, but production was trying to push that Chloe and Maddie were the best on the team because Abby was always giving choreography to the other girls that did not show off their strengths. And so the other girls ended up coming off as weaker dancers when really in their given styles and on their given sides for aerials and turns, they are just as strong, some of them stronger in certain areas. Anyway, Kelly tells us that she's not mad that Abby put Kendall in the trio because she knows that the whole thing is just being done to hurt her family. And while Kelly is the grown-up, I hear echoes of Kelly as Abby's student and as a child from having just heard what Paige said. And I just wonder how often Abby did this kind of stuff to Kelly too when she was little. And how long this has truly been going on, and if that's not why Paige is able to reframe stuff so well, because her mom was doing it as a child too.
I wonder too, like how much Kelly has talked about her experience with Abby and being a student of Abby, because I mean, that can certainly have an impact and have Paige be more aware.
Mm-hmm. Abby tells us that this week's group routine will be a lyrical contemporary number that she will be putting art on stage in a piece about bullying. Maddie tells us that she has been bullied before on her school bus and that she's seen a lot of bullying at her school. Abby tells us that for this dance, she's going to need someone to portray the role of the bully. Holly tells us that she finds it pretty ironic that Abby has chosen to do a dance about bullying, considering that her methods of teaching can also be considered bullying. Of course, this means that Abby has selected Nia to play the bully. If you couldn't tell, that was a segue. They broke out the Segway scooter again. Holly is not happy, and all the girls giggle when Abby announces this, and one of them says that they can't even imagine Nia playing a bully. And Jill pipes in that she says that it's just acting. Nia will have to act, and the whole time, Holly stands there looking completely and utterly bemused. Abby tells Nia that she has to be big and strong and tough and nasty, and while Nia tells us that she was excited that Miss Abby picked her to be the star in the group dance this week, Holly tells us that despite her excitement at the opportunity for Nia, she is not at all happy that the role is that of a bully.
While I can see like the whole acting piece with bullying, a lot of it is about power. And all these girls were pretty much on the same playing field. So it would be hard. And it would be going against Nia's very character, which she is so just genuine and sweet. I don't know that she could pretend to be so mean to her friends.
Well, there's that. And then there's also sending a group of girls out on stage, only one of them looking markedly different, and having that child be the one that portrays the bully. Any child of color being automatically cast as the bully feels really yucky. It feels a little extra yucky when that child is black. Because, and a little girl, because then you have the angry black woman for a 9-year-old. It's just adding to the fact that Abby always portrays Nia as a caricature. Abby then goes on to tell us that she needs someone to go up against their bully, and that she knows that everyone thinks that this is Brooke's picture off to the side of this pyramid, but it's not, because she always has something up her sleeve. And then we get a black and white flashback of Leslie, Peyton's mom, yelling at Abby to find some way to get Peyton into the group. And Abby lifts the cover off of Peyton's headshot and tells the girls to welcome her. They all run over, screaming and jumping up to hug Miss Peyton as she walks into the studio. Peyton introduces herself to us, and she tells us that she's 14 years old and she's been dancing at the ALDC for 4 years. She also tells us that she knows that not everyone's able to join this group, so being asked to join is a really big deal. Jill tells us that she really hates this whole idea because she just knows that Peyton's only coming here to try and pull their spot right out from under Kendall.
Jill, it's not about you.
Jill, we told you last episode, try moving in silence. She's not going to do that this episode. And we've also told her before she needs to shut up. She's also not going to do that this episode. So just buckle up, okay? Prepare yourself. Gird your loins. Do whatever you feel necessary. Because what Jill is about to unfold it's not like when it's kind of like a surprise Kathy. Abby tells Peyton that she is also on probation this week and that she's going to have to prove herself. With that, Abby dismisses the moms, and she tells us that she knows that both Kendall and Peyton really want spots on the team, but that with Brooke being gone, there's only one place open. Which seriously makes no earthly sense, since they had the auditions to find Kendall before Brooke had ever left, and they were already down Vivi, so aren't there 2 spots? Make it make sense? Make any of this make sense? While the girls get to work in rehearsal, up in dance jail, the moms are discussing the trio. Christy points out that the original trio had been together since the girls were all toddlers, and Melissa agrees, saying, undefeated I have you. And I do think that it's important for us to remember that we are talking about page erasure in particular here, which has been known to get a certain kind of a rise out of Melissa. She loves Paige. Paige was at her wedding and neither of her girls were. There is something about Paige for Melissa. She just loves her. So This is not going to go over well for Melissa. It would have been better if you'd taken out Chloe. Maybe even Maddie. I don't know, but not Paige. Kelly just agrees that saying that yes, the girls have never lost. And Christy says that she thinks it's really rotten that Paige was pulled from the trio, and Jill turns on her 900est of voices, saying that she just doesn't think that Abby's trying to replace Paige, and Kelly claps back, shouting like she just did. In an interview, Christy tells us that Jill's being a little Pollyanna right now, saying like how nice it is that everybody gets a turn, but that's just not how it works with the trio. The trio is untouchable, it's sacred, and you leave it alone. And like Rachel and I said before, as a performer, you know, we kind of understand this. Sometimes certain small groups just work particularly well together. You understand each other. You don't have to be told things. And well, it can seem snobby or elitist from the outside, and I'm not saying that it never is, but quite often, the reason you keep it all the same is for the betterment and the safety of those particular performers, especially when they're children.
I don't think that Jill knows that it's not like they're taking turns thing.
She does not.
This is an intentionally malicious act.
And she doesn't get it. She thinks it's just, she doesn't get it right now. She's not gonna like it when someone else gets a turn in the trio. I can tell you that right now. Sorry for the spoiler, but I don't think anyone's surprised by that. She only likes it when it benefits her little Kendall. But when it happens to her, she sees what she believes to be maliciousness, even though in that case they are just going back to the regular trio. And she doesn't like it. She needs to figure out like how to come back to reality. Down in rehearsal, Nia is learning the part of the bully, and she's pushing the other dancers choreographically, not out of malice or spite. And while Abby is telling us about how she wanted to tell this story because bullying is always on the news right now, in the studio, she's yelling at Nia to shove the girls harder and do it bigger. And Holly just can't take it. She heads downstairs to confront Abby, and she tells us that as a dance mom, sometimes she has to make the hard choices. And this was going to be one of them. She wasn't going to let Nia portray the bully. Holly enters the studio and tells Abby that she has a big problem with Nia being the bully, and that she knows that Abby's just going to say that it's acting, and that she really does want Nia to play featured characters, just not that of the bully. Abby blows all the way up, screaming at Nia that she finally gave her a featured part and her mom is taking it away from her. And while Abby is making the whole Rocky Mountain range out of a fucking molehill, Holly tells us that she wishes there was a zero tolerance bullying policy at the studio like there is at her school. And Nia tells us that she knows why her mom didn't want her to play the part of the bully. It's because she's not a bully.
I also just think like, yes, it is Holly's fault that Nia doesn't get to portray the lead character. And I think that Nia is aware enough to know and trusts her mom enough that she understands why her mom didn't want that for her.
I hate that children of color in this world have to learn things from such a young age that we intentionally shield other children from, like, oh, but they're too young. In my particular worldview, if other children have to live it, all children are old enough to learn about it. And we're going to see here in a little bit that not even the moms really, to this day, understand what Holly was getting at here. And that's a big part of the problem. Anyway, Abby continues to yell in an interview saying that Holly took a part away from her child. Back in rehearsal, Abby reassigns the part of the bully to Peyton, which makes way more sense because why would there be someone of Peyton's height who isn't already the bully? Like, why were we ever going to buy that Nia was the bully unless you really just were going for the racist angle here?
So that's one thing that, like, I'm like, make it make more sense.
Make it make any sense. Any sense.
Because Abby knew that Peyton was coming in. Abby knew that Peyton was coming in and still decided to assign the role to Nia, where
to
the
mess
power
with Holly
and control.
And the reason she likes to mess with Holly is why? Because she's a what? She's a racist. And look, we're never diagnosing anyone on this podcast, but I will fully, with my whole entire chest, diagnose that woman as a racist. It's not a medical condition. It's a condition of your soul, and you need to fucking fix it.
It's not a mental health condition either, so you are well within your legal rights to, quote unquote, diagnose it.
Anyway, all the girls' choreography has changed now because of the reassignment, and Chloe starts making some small yet completely understandable mistakes. Instead of asking Chloe if she has any questions or reminding her gently that things are changing and we need to remember them even if it's hard, Abby tells Chloe that she doesn't know why Christy is always saying Chloe has no self-esteem because she's the cockiest little kid that Abby's ever worked with. Beyond answering her own query here, like this is exactly why this kid has no confidence, Abs, this whole thing right here, I cannot think of a nastier, more odious thing to say to anyone, let alone a 10-year-old child. She goes on to sardonically accuse Chloe for trying to choreograph part of the dance for another small mistake that she makes, and Chloe takes this whole thing very much to heart. In her own interview, Chloe tries to convince the producers that she, like, you can hear the defensiveness and like the, I know, I'm so sorry in her voice. She's like, I really wasn't trying to be a choreographer. I just didn't hear Miss Abby right. I wasn't trying to, I promise. Like, it is so, like, almost physically heartbreaking. Because you can tell that even though Abby's humor was entirely mean-spirited and wrong no matter what, the humor, even the little bit of humor that was there, went way over Chloe's 10-year-old head. And she really thought that Abby was just accusing her of trying to take over the dance. And this is precisely what we mean when we say you can't joke with kids about stuff like this or about stuff like cutting their heads off. They can't understand you, and all they hear is a threat.
And, I think when an adult, especially an adult that a kid tends to trust, says something like about their personality that they don't like, that child, in an effort to people please, will try to do the very opposite thing. So instead of associating cockiness with arrogance, she's going to associate cockiness with confidence and therefore pull back in her confidence like a shrinking violet
for fear of being cocky. Exactly. Abby loved to say that the only thing that they showed on the show, like, she would correct them nicely 3 times. And then, by the 4th, 5th, 10th time, she's lost her patience and she's screaming at the kid. However, the moms have also said they didn't show you the worst of what Abby said on the show. The kids have also said they didn't show you the worst of what Abby said on the show. And Abby has also said in different interviews that the reason she said things like, you're stupid, you're a dum-dum, you're a dodo, things like that, or calling out kids as cockiness, was because that was how her dad talked to her. And it was all in jest, so she makes the same jokes to other kids. So I don't fully buy that she was, because she also tells Chloe that she doesn't have a brain in her head during this interaction. I don't buy that she, kindly told Chloe several times to do this right. I think Chloe made enough mistakes a few times because they're changing the whole choreography that Abby lost her patience and went off like this. But this is the standard for you pissed off Abby. And Chloe can't fix it. If she made 4 separate mistakes, Chloe can't fix one of those mistakes before Abby's going off like this.
Well, and Chloe, at some point goes, I didn't understand what she was asking me to do. So she was doing something in an effort to get a correction, but because she knew that if she asked, she would be yelled at. And instead, it's a no-win situation for her.
Abby continues to scream at Chloe, insinuating she's unintelligent, and Chloe begins to cry. Up in dance jail, Christy points out that the dance is supposed to be about the dangers of bullying, and here's Abby bullying their children. She tells us in an interview that she knows that she can't do much when Abby starts stuff like this, because if she's not careful, Abby will gleefully do something much, much worse. Christy continues to convince herself that Chloe will leave rehearsal, saying she'll come out, and Kelly immediately snaps her back to reality, yelling, "She's not gonna come out of there!" And Holly suggests that Christy go downstairs, and Christy says that she can't. Abby continues her assault, telling Chloe to suck it up. The next kid is on speed dial to get here if she doesn't. That evening, we join the team on our regularly scheduled production field trip of the week to the HOTLINE's house so that the girls can see Brooke. I am really glad that Chloe got to do this after that nastiness, because, Lord, we all needed some uplifting stuff here. The girls hang out in the living room and they ask Brooke about cheer. They're shocked to learn that she doesn't have to go every day and that the coaches are nice. Then Nia and Paige do their own attempt at cheer, and it is just the cutest little thing you've ever seen in your whole dang life. And the girls all tell Brooke that they miss her and that they love her and that she's their sister. And it's so, so sweet. And, we just loved each other so much.
I love watching Brooke's face during this whole thing, because she's just so over it.
She tells us she's happy to see the girls, but you can tell she's the cameras again. I thought I was done with this for a bit. Brooke tells us that she misses the girls and that they're like her family, and she feels like she's been away from them for a million years. And that part of what she says is completely believable. But when the girls ask her if she is sad that she won't be coming for the competition this weekend, she immediately says no, because I get to go to a football game. She's not sad to be away from dance, but she is sad to have been away from her friends. She has Kenzie in her lap nearly the whole time, and she has said in so many interviews Kenzie was her own baby. It's now 2 days later, and we join Maddie in her solo rehearsal, where she tells us that she really wants to do well this week and beat Chloe so she can get back to the top of the pyramid. And we do see her say this, but I am sure that production was asking her questions do you want to beat Chloe? Do you want to get to the top of the pyramid? Just I'm sure production was asking Chloe the same thing. Then we get an immediate cut into Chloe's solo rehearsal, where she tells us that she thinks that Maddie is ready for the head-to-head challenge this week because she is such a strong dancer, and that she hopes she does great in her own solo too. And just, again, that's why I'm sure that the production was asking Maddie questions about wanting to beat Chloe, because these girls were such good friends. They kiss each other before they go on stage and leave lipstick marks on each other's cheeks. They're such cute friends. Anyway, we head into group rehearsal, and Abby tells us that Peyton is doing well in her new role as the lead in the dance, and that she's a natural-born leader, so she makes an excellent replacement for Brooke. For fuck's sake, Abby, just leave the last part out. It's a fucking inside thought, okay? No one asked.
I think, in part, she didn't actually want to deal with the girls being children, and so she's hoping have an older child to tame them. And so because it's Peyton, and Peyton wants to be a leader because she is who she is, Abby sees that as an opportunity to pawn that off on her.
Abby does this thing where she always wants what she can't have, right? So while the girls are little, she hates that they're immature and little and can't immediately read her thoughts, read her mind. But then as soon as the girls start getting older in the later seasons, she's pining for the minis. And the younger age group, which in dance is they're called minis, MINIS. And it's very narcissistically coded. She wants what she can't have, and she wants the parts of it that make her job easier and also give her the most power. She wants a team full of little kids that are moldable, that she also does not have to teach.
She wants the cuteness effect
and the adulation
without dealing with the behavior.
Back in dance jail, Jill's bag of insecurities has spilled all over all of everyone, and she's not making any kind of effort to clean it up. She goes on and on about how Peyton doesn't fit in with the group, making comments about Peyton's body. Yes, Peyton's tall. We get it. You don't need to call her Big Peyton or Peyton the Big Bully. It works for this dance. Leslie, of course, has a lot to say back about this, and also, of course, it's nothing constructive. She keeps pointing out that she thinks that Peyton's a better dancer compared to Kendall, and like, ma'am, what planet are you on? Meet Kendall. Meet Kendall, she's 8. Meet Peyton, she's 14. They've both been doing the same hobby their whole lives. Which one do you think is probably better? I'll give you 3 guesses, and the first 2 don't fucking count. Kendall is half Peyton's age. Of course Peyton's a stronger dancer, you off-brand blow pop. Gah!
But yes, that was exactly what I was going to say. Peyton is older. Much older.
Abby tells us that she doesn't know Jill well enough yet to guess how she's going to handle Leslie. But she does know Leslie, and so she suggests that Jill get a baseball bat out. And I hate so much of this episode. Leslie and Jill continue to argue, and it is as fruitless to watch as it is uncomfy to watch. They say a lot of words to end up not saying really anything at all. We head into trio rehearsal, and Abby tells us that trios are notoriously difficult to pull off because the spacing in them can be so tricky. And I think that this was production's rather poor attempt at foreshadowing the slight mess up with the trio that's to come later in the episode, even though there was absolutely no way to prepare for what ends up happening. But, you know, we got to bring out the Segway scooter whenever we can. While Abby has Maddie, Chloe, and Kendall learning the number, she has Paige sitting in the corner running their music for them. Now, having a child run music for other people's dances is going to be an issue that pops up again from time to time throughout the run of the show. And the moms have since clarified that they never minded having their girls learn the numbers to act as swings or understudies for other pieces, but that running music was never a part of that unless the cameras were there, and that this would last for hours. The girls running the music weren't learning anything. They weren't allowed to stretch. They weren't allowed to ask to leave or bring in homework to catch up on. And Abby took these opportunities to be especially ruthless to whoever was running the music. And she would yell at them for every mistake they made while running it, even though they didn't know the piece and were not familiar with the music setup. In interview, Abby hems and haws over whether Kendall or Paige would have been the better choice for this number. She says she thinks that Kendall is doing well, but that Paige would have done a darling job acting in the role, but ultimately decides that Kendall is just further ahead in her ability to comprehend and pick up quickly. Ma'am, you just got Kendall as a student, and Paige is 2 years older than Kendall, so
Sounds
who's in charge of that?
Teaching issue,
right? That's what I'm saying.
Learning issue.
Anyway, I just can't help but think that this was another way for Abby to get in and what she thought was yet another dig at Paige's intelligence, since we all know by now that Abby has had about as much to say about who was really in the trio as the freaking Tooth Fairy. Like, she wasn't in charge of this. This was production. But she couldn't leave it alone and be satisfied that production had excluded Paige. She had to pile on too. Up in dance jail, Kelly is made aware that Paige is running the trio's music, and she becomes upset, saying that there's no reason for Abby to have Paige doing that except to hurt her. As the rehearsal goes on, Abby becomes more involved, actually coming out of her designated spot sitting in the corner of the room and starts doing some moves with the girls. Up in dance jail, Leslie tells the moms that she just loves when Abby dances with the kids, and then, unfortunately, all together, Leslie, Kelly, and Christy make some body-shaming jokes about Abby and the kinds of dance steps they think would be unsafe for her to do. And listen, as nasty as Abby's behavior is in this and all episodes, it is still vastly important for us to remember that bad people who are fat are not bad because they are fat, and we cannot conflate the two. It is the next day, and we're headed on yet another production field trip, although this one will not be nearly as fun as the last. Leslie has decided to invite all of the moms out for coffee to see how they felt about her and Peyton coming to join them on the team. Things start out nicely with Leslie telling them how excited she is to be with them this week and how excited Peyton was when she found out. But Christy tells us that she's kind of wary about this whole thing because she's known Leslie for a long time, and there's usually an underhanded motive when it comes to Leslie and niceties. It seems that Christy's spidey senses were on point this day because soon Leslie gets down to brass tacks, asking Kelly if Brooke really wants to cheer, then why does Kelly even bother showing up to the studio? When she gets an unsatisfactory answer from Kelly, being that she has more than one child and Paige still wants to dance with her friends at that studio, she starts in on Christy, asking why she insists on bringing Chloe back to a studio where she cries every day, because what kind of parent would do that? When she once again gets a dissatisfying answer, this time it's that Christy tells Leslie that the reason she and Chloe stay at the ALDC is between the two of them and no one else, and that she doesn't owe Leslie any sort of explanation. Leslie says that if she won't answer, then she should stop complaining about it too. She then moves on to Jill, telling her that if Brooke returns, she thinks that Peyton and Brooke should get the spots over Kendall because they're the real team members. And Melissa tells us that Leslie has always had kind of a take charge personality, and that what is happening today is really just Leslie's way.
I find it interesting that Leslie is so up in arms. Well, if she makes your daughter cry, why do you're kind of a bad parent to keep him there, when in future episodes.
Oh yes. We will not even in future episodes. We'll get there this episode. Just wait. Holly then comes in to join the moms on the worst coffee date in Dance Moms history, and Leslie wastes no time in getting down to business with her either. She initially asks how Nia felt after losing the part, and Holly responds that Nia was a little upset, but that she understood why this was important. And she goes on to tell Leslie that over the last 2 years, she's really been having to talk with Abby more and more about continuously casting Nia in roles that are negative stereotypes, and that they had to draw the line at this one. Leslie tells Holly to remember again that it's just a dance. And Holly is having none of it. She immediately claps back that it might just be a dance to Leslie, but for them, it's part of their identity, so it goes beyond that. And this is where I will say that even today, some of the moms do not understand what Holly was talking about. On the Back to the Bar podcast, Kelly was like, well, yeah, because she's the principal of a school. I'm like, no. Holly wasn't talking about her identity as an educator. Holly was talking about her identity and Nia's identity as Black women, okay? And I just think this says a lot about our society and where we are in regards to intersectionality. We really have to stop assuming we understand everything only as we can easily relate it to ourselves and how we would understand things. We have to really hear other people and not just tell them that we're listening to them. Because it's not like Holly wasn't telling them repeatedly. Leslie goes on to tell the moms that she never cares what kind of part Peyton is asked to play. Let's hold on to that thought, bookmark that in your brain. Or if she cries every day at Abby's studio, bookmark that in your brain. If her kid wants to dance and she wants to dance for Abby, then she'll do whatever. And if Peyton wants to stay somewhere that makes her miserable, Leslie says she doesn't care if Peyton cries. And again, let's just hold on to that one too.
But didn't she literally just tell the other moms they were bad moms for allowing their children to remain miserable in the studio?
No. What we can glean from this, what she was actually saying is they're bad moms for caring that their children cry and not telling them like we should go somewhere else. Because what she's saying here is, I don't care if Peyton's upset if she chooses coming back here. I tell her all the time we could go somewhere else, and she says, no, I want to dance at Abby's. Then you'll do whatever Abby says if that's your choice. That's what Leslie's saying. Does she realize that is a different,
terrible?
Yeah, I was going to say, does she realize that that's a different but equally bad kind of parenting? No, she does not. She thinks she's doing great. I will say a lot of what happens in this episode sets up the kind of characters that Leslie and Peyton will be portrayed as for the rest of their time on Dance Moms. And they did receive, and I potentially still today think they received death threats. And this is absolutely disgusting. And Unhinged does not begin to cover it. Shut the fuck up. If that is your
are
thoughts.
A person who sends people death threats,
14-year-olds,
I want you to email me. I want you to like find me on the socials. I want you to message me because we're gonna have a conversation.
again, I'm very sure that much like production was doing with Jill, they were probably having a super fun heyday with Leslie. Much like Jill, she's super easy to get a reaction out of. In Leslie's case, it is pure anger. She's very easy to rile up, and I can only imagine what they told her to do in preparation for this coffee date. Like, it's her very first, she gets to host her own field trip. But like, much like Jill this season, the moms, like Jill in this season, the moms have said that like Leslie in real life and Jill in real life were not very different from what we were seeing on screen. And they'd known Leslie for years. They hadn't known Jill for years. So she'd been like this for a long time. And I don't know about y'all, but this is not the kind of person that I want to come to my cookout. They're not coming to the Christmas party. If I have to be around this kind of person, I like try and just say hi, and I know I'm going to eventually say something that's going to piss them off, even if I don't say something directly to them. Like, for me, she can't even come to the teddy bears picnic with this attitude. Like, I don't want this around, and I can only imagine what this had to have felt like, because production loved to spring her on them, not be like, okay guys, be prepared, Leslie's coming this week. Like, no, they weren't getting that. And I was just going to ask Ray, like, how do you handle this kind of personality? Because I don't think that I am doing anything healthy when I'm avoiding them.
Sometimes avoiding is all you can do. Just kind of not placating them, but just niceties, just to kind of
Sure,
get by.
Dan.
Staying surface level, yeah.
Okay.
Not giving them any substance that they can use against you later. They can often be appeased by, okay, agree to disagree.
It's the next day, and Abby is having the girls try on their costumes, which, of course, we all know means that we're supposed to think that they're bad, because we only try on costumes when they're supposed to be, like, salacious.
These ones are just so Britney coded.
Oh, yes, they're very Britney Spears, Hit Me Baby One More Time coded. And because of that, they're really not that bad at all. They're very school uniform-ish with some fishnets, but they're little kid fishnets, so they're not crazy. It's not bad. Fishnets are used in dance. They're just a different kind of tights. They're like boobs. We sexualize them for no reason. They have a function. It's weird. Anyway, the moms in this case are not vibing with the fishnets because their shirts are tied up. They're just like, one or the other. Both together is a little yuck. And the fact that Peyton's stockings do have holes purposefully ripped in them, they're like, oh, that gives a little yuck to it that we're not vibing with. Anyway, Christy tells us that she thinks that these costumes are Prostitutes the sequel, but she has since clarified on the Back to the Bar podcast that she's pretty sure that production asked her to say this, like as a free line, because these costumes are miles away from anything she would have considered prostitute-y. The moms argue with Abby, mainly saying that the fishnets are the problem, and Leslie says that she doesn't get why Peyton's have to be different. I thought we were supposed to go along with whatever Abby said, but okay. Abby tells her that she doesn't have to get it. Leslie doesn't have to get it. It's not her number, and she needs people to be able to easily identify Peyton as the bully. So the holes make her seem like the trashy bad girl at the fancy private school. This answer, of course, doesn't cut it for Leslie, who says she's fine with her daughter being the bully, but not some slutty sleaze in some scripper joint. And, like, ma'am, madam, Miss Queen of the questionable crap coming right out of your mouth. What the fuck did you just say about your child in front of all of the children? Holy tights have nothing to do with scripting. What a very weird parallel for you to draw.
Holy tights might have something to do with church, though.
Yeah. Like, did you not just say that whatever part, whatever dance, whatever costume, whatever thing Abby wants your kid to do, they'll do, and you won't say anything about it? Or, like, was that just me, or was that what you said? Just like in our first introduction to Leslie, even Abby is kind of left speechless by the sheer lunacy and inappropriateness of what Leslie has managed to stretch this out to.
Ma'am, I don't know where you found the audacity on sale,
but please put it back. Again, even if you have managed to render Abby speechless, you've done something very wrong. So, like, Abby and the moms and Gianna are all, like, agog jaws are dropped, and they're all like looking at each other like, did she really just say that? What do we do with this? She said that about her own kid. Can we leave, please? And it's really bad if you've managed to render Abby speechless, but it's even worse if Abby and Gianna and all the moms are looking at each other in agreement. Like, we all heard the same thing? It was all that bad? Like, oh my word.
You are bullying your child. Like, this role could not be more perfect for your kid right now.
Jill's kiss-assery manages to save the day when she says that she has a lot riding on this, so she needs them to go with whatever Abby thinks will help them win. You have a lot riding on this, Jill. You have you. Anyway, Abby decides to keep the costume, but trades the stockings for knee-high socks, and Abby also tells Melissa to make sure that Maddie's hair is done in 2 really high pigtails, so when Abby sticks the kick me sign onto Maddie's back, everyone can read it crystal clear from the audience, and we will have to wait and see how that goes and just kind of tuck it away in our memory box.
Bookmark that in your brain.
Yep. It is now competition day, and Abby finally tells us where the fuck we're going. She says this weekend, Hollywood Vibe is being held in St. Louis, Missouri. But suddenly, the team is already there. We magically transported there. We got no travel footage at all. And as soon as they enter the dressing room, Abby begins doing what, Rachel? What's she doing?
Yelling at the kids.
She's yelling at the girls about how everyone at this competition is in the industry, so they can't be anything less than perfect. And this could be important for the rest of their lives, let alone her life. Because, we got to get in some promo for our friends, and B, everything is about Abby. Abby then tells us that this week she's got 2 sets of moms and kids on probation, but she thinks that Jill probably feels like she's a little bit ahead of the game because she's been on probation for a while, and Leslie and Peyton just started, but that she doesn't think that that's how Leslie's viewing things. While Leslie is doing Peyton's makeup, she starts giving her some reminders and corrections for the group performance, and she tells us that she's noticed that the way that Jill's been eyeing them today, and it hasn't been very friendly, but that they can take it because it's just a little bit of extra competition. Meanwhile, Jill is giving some performance tips of her own, ultimately telling Kendall that if she does well in the trio today, she'll give her this $20, and she places it on the dressing table, just for like extra reinforcement. And in her own interview, Jill tells us that she just can't stand the idea that Kendall is still going to be on probation. Maddie tells us that she saw Jill tell Kendall she could have the money if she danced well, and she thought that it was real weird because normally their moms don't do that unless it's with like ice cream or something like that. And I'm living for like Cheesemay Maddie, like spill all the tea, sister. Yes, ma'am. But and also I can't imagine how weird that must have felt. Like, if you're with a group where one thing is the social norm, like, if you guys do well today, we'll take you out for ice cream. Or like, if your soccer team does pizza when you win, and then all of a sudden you got a new goalie and the mom's like, if you play well today, I'll give you this $10. Like, I cannot imagine how jarring that must have been for an 8-year-old. Like, ugh, what?
I mean, I would say that bribing with money is better than bribing with candy, because we don't need to associate rewards and sweet treats. Like, we don't need that association that you have to earn something enjoyable.
I do think, like, yes, we don't want to associate doing good work with eating something enjoyable. I do think it's a little different when it's like going out for pizza as a group or going out for ice cream as a group, because that's like a social interaction. You could maybe make it like going to the park or something, but these kids weren't, like Abby had all those rules about you can't go roller skating, you can't do. So I think it's a little different, and I think you just have to continuously make sure you're framing it as not being around the ice cream and being like, we get to go out with your friends, and then the ice cream is just an aside.
Well, and I think there's a difference too between a collective group celebration and specifically motivating using a tool like money.
Abby reminds Jill and Leslie that their daughters are both still on probation, so that means that they are too, and they'll all just have to see how things go with the group performance today. Jill takes the extra opportunity to pile on just a little more pressure to Kendall, getting right in her ear and telling her that they're not going to let Peyton step in and take this out from under her, that Kendall needs to go out there and remind Abby why she picked her. Like, madam, are you going to go on stage with her today? No? Then there is no we or they here. Back off. Let your child chill. She will do so much better if she isn't freaking out all the way to the 9th dimension. It is time for the trio, and right before they head backstage, Abby is yelling at them about spacing when they get to the stage. The girls head out for the number, and they all start by sitting at the front of the stage with their legs hanging off the edge, which personally I think anything like this is always going to be a terrible idea. Every stage is always going to be set up differently. No matter how many times the kids rehearse, they cannot be prepared for what's to come in the performance. And like, no, Abigail, I don't think that's good training for how the professional world's really going to be either. Professional gigs have to have standards for safety to avoid shit like this. Like, even traveling shows that are at a different auditorium every 2 weeks, every week, they bring their own sets to avoid shit like this, okay? As the girls take the stage, the spot where Chloe is meant to sit is being blocked by a floor mic. These are used in dance competitions to pick up the footfalls for tap numbers so that the judges can really hear them. And Chloe makes the wise decision to sit off to the side of the mic, but this leaves her off center from the other two, and they don't know to adjust, so everything just looks off, and Chloe is completely out of the spotlight.
If Abby truly was training her dancers to be professional, then all three of them could have adjusted in that moment, and it would not have fallen on a single person.
I feel like that might have happened if it had been Chloe, Maddie, and Paige. And I don't mean this as a dig to Kendall. I just mean that, like, Chloe and Paige would have been the two that needed to adjust. Maddie wouldn't have needed to. And Chloe and Paige, the joke is that they're like twins. I feel like something subtle might have, like, Paige might have seen it out of her periffs and might have moved over. I'm not saying 100% it could have happened. It just wouldn't have surprised me if Paige had realized. Because they're so used to performing with one another all the time, where Kendall's not, and she's going to be really nervous. This is her first time. She's going to be so locked into just getting everything right and earning that $20. She's not going to notice. And that's not a dig at Kendall.
This is where the chemistry of the group comes into play. That we mentioned it at the very beginning, like, there are just things that can happen where you like build off of each other because you're so used to working with each other that was now missing in this particular dance.
Jill was freaking out in the audience because obviously Chloe's decision is all about Kendall and, you know, Jill, bombastic side freaking eye over here. Abby is making faces and rolling her eyes, and the dance starts. We get a decent shot of the dance, but they do change the music. The number is actually supposed to be like a full-blown musical theater piece, but they cut it with a very jazzy, like Destiny's Child sounding song that the company had the rights to, which ends up making the whole thing look weird. And I really like the song. I think it could have made for a really cute trio, but it just doesn't fit with the choreography they're doing. The girls all do well, given that they only had a few days to learn it, but none of them give perfect performances. No one has perfect feet or great releve in their turns, and while they're all good, no one is, like, technically leaps or bounds above one of the other dancers. The dance ends the same way it began, with the girls sitting at the end of the stage, and Chloe, once again, has to be off to the side because of another mic. Back in the dressing room, Abby enters immediately, like making noises, sucking her teeth, and sighing before asking the girls how they think they did, signaling to us, of course, that she is less than impressed. Maddie speaks up saying that she thinks it was good, and Abby responds by telling Kendall that just when she was planning to order her ALDC uniform, she saw all the mistakes that she made on stage, telling Kendall that she has to learn to angle herself away from the audience so people don't see things, which for anyone playing along at home was the exact thing she got mad at Kendall at the beginning of the episode for doing last week. Like, just try, Abby. Really try to make some goddamn sense for once in your life. Pretty, please. Jill tells us that she was so mad at Abby for teasing Kendall that way and dangling a carrot in front of her. Then Abby moves on to calling out Chloe for being off on the spacing at the start of the number. Now, on the bright side, she isn't yelling at Chloe, but on the not so bright side, the moms have all agreed that there was absolutely nothing that Chloe could have done to prevent getting in trouble here. If she sat on the mic, Abby would have been indelibly pissed. If she sat on the other side of the mic right next to Maddie, she'd still have been off of spacing, and it would have potentially negatively impacted Abby's favorite. So that's a big no-no. And lastly, sitting off to the side, she did choose to still put her off spacing and still upsets Abby. So Chloe was like very much caught between the rock and the hard place in this moment. Abby tries to tell the moms that it is their job to scope out the stage early to prevent these kind of mishaps, but the moms have also told us that if they were ever in the performance area outside of when their specific numbers were performing, Abby would completely lose it on them and punish the girls. So again, there was absolutely no way to prepare for or get around this. Abby ends this lovely little recap by telling Chloe that the pressure is on, and we get some shots of Chloe pacing with her head in her hands while she's prepping for her solo. While Christy tells us that Abby has put Chloe in this space where she beats herself up for every little thing and has no confidence left in herself, so she psychs herself out instead. It's time for solos, and Maddie is backstage, while Abby tells us that after a disappointing trio performance, these solos better figure out how to get out there and be the best. Maddie tells us that she's really nervous for her solo because she wants to win so she can get back to the top of the pyramid. Maddie takes the stage with her lyrical number, which we finally learned is called The Girl I Want to Be, and honestly, I really love this dance. It's a great Maddie number. It shows off her artistry in absolutely every way, and it's totally age appropriate. I feel like this is a number that gets overlooked, but it's definitely one of my favorite Maddie pieces. Abby tells us that Maddie looked like a seasonal professional out there and that Chloe had better dance her ass off. That's literally what she says about a 10-year-old if she plans on staying at the top of that pyramid. Like, Abby, for the love of God, when you're talking about Maddie, just talk about Maddie. She's your favorite. It shouldn't be hard. Leave Chloe out of it.
I also think it's funny because, I mean, Maddie's costume was just, it was gorgeous. And it had less coverage than the schoolgirl outfits. So, I mean, the fact that there was that whole, like, oh, they're midriff controversy.
It's the sequel. That's why I totally believe that was a wild line, that they just asked, like, Christy, like, hey, we're going to use this at some point in the season. Can you just say something about costumes being prostitutes the sequel, and we'll throw it in when we need it? And it's a contract, so she did it. Chloe is getting ready to head backstage for her solo, and Abby is yelling at her, of course. She has Chloe run her solo one last time while she screams correction after correction at her. Like, no wonder these kids freeze up on stage so often. If I was getting unnecessary corrections right before I was like 100% supposed to remember right before a performance, my brain would freeze up too. Christy tells us that Chloe has a lot of extra pressure on her from Abby this week, being at the top of the pyramid, because being at the top means you can only go down. And right before Chloe goes backstage, Abby pulls Chloe off to the side and tells her that she needs to realize that she's only letting her do a solo this week at all because she's at the top of the pyramid, and that Abby's the one who put her there. Of course, she caps this off by reminding her that it's one thing to get to the top of the pyramid, and it's a whole other thing to stay there. This is the kind of thing that Abby would just, like, never do to a child she didn't want to mess with. It definitely feels like Abby is intentionally setting out to purposefully mess with Chloe here. And the thing is, like, upon this watch through, this is another thing that I'm noticing Abby is enjoying as well. You can kind of...
She would never do that. She would never do that to Maddie.
Not just to Maddie. Like, there are other times where, like, she does it to Brooke, and then sometimes she doesn't do it to Brooke. It depends on how she's feeling about her that week. Like, it just depends on how she's feeling about that kid. She's always going to do it to Chloe, and she's almost always going to do it to Nia, and she's always going to do it to Paige, but she's sometimes going to do it to Mackenzie, but sometimes she loves Mackenzie. Like, it's just, she's never going to do it when she doesn't want to mess with a kid, but sometimes there are kids she always wants to mess with, and it's disgusting to watch. While she waits backstage, Chloe tells us that she's a little nervous because Abby keeps saying everyone's replaceable, and she really hopes that Abby doesn't mean her. Chloe takes the stage with her lyrical number called Proof, and it is a beautiful piece with such a sweet song, and we get a decent shot of the number, but it does feel like Chloe's just radiating a little bit of anxiety. It's like she never takes a breath while she's on stage, and I think if you don't do dance, it'd be harder to recognize that that's what's happening. Christy says she loves what Chloe did on stage, she went out there and danced just like she knew she could. But for me, when I was watching, it felt very much like Chloe was holding her breath. Christy goes on to say that she doesn't know why Chloe gets in this headspace, where she's so nervous and gets in her own way, and that it really frustrates her. And it's like, you don't know why? This just made me think of like how badly this show needed a real therapist, because I think for most of us who've spent any amount of time in the child development and mental health spaces, we know exactly why Chloe was feeling this way. Like, this was a trauma response, and you can't just slap a Band-Aid over it, tell her, like, you could do great, and send her out on stage. It's not going to work. Christy has since admitted that she was much harder on Chloe during the show than she ever should have been, and that a lot of it stemmed from this idea that Chloe was just getting in her own way. Yeah, I just think pretty much everyone here needed a good old-fashioned therapist. Abby, of course, says that Chloe Solo still had some things wrong with it, but that other than that, she did a nice job because, you know, of course, Abby can't say a true nice thing about Chloe or she might die. Chloe tells us that she wishes that Abby would pay as much attention to her when she has a solo as she does to Maddie when Maddie dances, and it's so sad. Back in the dressing room, as the girls are getting ready for the group dance, everyone is rushing around, and Leslie is running through the group dance with Peyton. She even tries to, like, weirdly recruit Paige to do it with him. It wouldn't be weird except for the way that Leslie says it. She's like, Paige, come here, do it with us. And this whole thing her yelling at Paige is ultimately what sets Abby off. Abby asks Leslie if she was a dance teacher in another life, and then starts telling her that Peyton is 14 years old and she should be running the dance by herself. Then she tells Peyton that if she doesn't know the dance by now, she's never going to.
Which, I mean, is kind of true. It's like when you study, like cram for a test. If you don't know it going into the test, you're probably not going to remember it.
I don't think you should. She gets right in Peyton's face. She, like, grabs Peyton's arm and, like, bends around, gets right in Peyton's face when she says, like, if you don't know it by now, you're never going to know it. I don't think that's how you should give that information to a 14-year-old,
no,
but of course it's Abby, so, you know.
While it is an accurate statement, like, if it's not settled in your body, it's probably not going to settle in your body.
But of course she had, like, she's just like Abby. She's going to say something true. She's going to say something right, but she's going to say it in a bad way. Of course she is. Peyton tells us that Abby shouldn't interfere when their parents are helping them, because that's what parents are for. They're moms and they know what they're doing. Now, personally, I kind of agree a little bit with both sides, but I disagree quite a bit with both sides. I've encountered parents like Leslie before, and Abby is a bit right. Leslie should be asking things like, okay, you're dressed, what should you be doing now? Like, to give Peyton a cue to start running the dance on her own, if that's what she does before she goes out. It helps warm up her body, you know, kind of get things. If there were any last minute changes, remind herself of it. That'll help. It's the way that Leslie was running through it with her 14-year-old that's like, you're not her dance coach, and B, she's 14, she does need to do some of this on her own. And then also, like, telling Paige she needed to be doing it too. Like, that's not your kid. And we all knew that mom when we were little, like the mom that was fully willing to. It's not like you're best friends with her kid, and so it's like your mom if you get in trouble. Like, she's always yelling at other people's kids, and it's so weird, and it makes you feel yucky in your tummy. That's the kind of vibe that Leslie's giving off here. It didn't feel warm or inviting or encouraging when she asked Paige to join. It felt like a demand, and you can't demand things of other people's children. However, like, regardless of all that Leslie did wrong, Abby's approach to telling Leslie and Peyton that this should be Peyton's responsibility was completely abhorrent. For all of Abby's talk of having respected her own parents and expecting good parenting from all the parents in her own studio, she freaks out every time anyone shows any parental instinct at all. And then she never, like, talks about it. Like I said, she could have just told Leslie, like, next time maybe just say, like, okay, we've got your hair and makeup done. What should you be doing now? If you want your child to act like an adult, you have to help them do that. Because Abby is, the way she approaches Leslie, and also because it's Leslie, this was never going to go over very well. And she is now going to set off another Abby-Leslie fight. Of course, after Abby has upset Leslie, Leslie now thinks that no one can practice at all and everyone has to leave the dressing room right now. So when Gianna has the girls start running the number all together, she freaks out, saying that they'll be late and no one will hold the number for them. So what is even the point of rehearsing if they miss the slot? And Abby tells her to stop because while they might not hold the spot for Leslie Ackerman from Pennsylvania, they might hold it for Abby Lee Miller. And she caps it off by telling Leslie to calm down because it's her name and reputation on the line, not theirs. And for some reason, even Christy today says she doesn't know why this set her off so much. But this sets off Christy, who says that it's not just the kids' names, it's not just her name, it's the kids' names too. And Abby is enraged all over again. And as the girls file out of the room to go backstage, Abby tells Chloe, "Your mother destroys you." And Christy yells at her not to say that to her child. And Abby says, "Look at the way you act. Be a role model." And Christy retorts that Abby is the worst role model of them all. And just like that, it is now time for the group to take the stage. Christy does agree that, like, she hated when Abby said, like, you know, it's their own names. It's not just, you know, they do dance under your studio, but it is their names. But she's just like, why did I jump into this? Like a Leslie fight? Why? And, you know, what a fun way for the group to be heading on stage. It's no wonder how these kids had anxiety. It's just no wonder.
For real. I work with lots of kids who like to do competitive sports and things like that. And we have to talk about the finality of competitions and how it's really not the end of the world unless you're in like a pro sports team.
And just like that, it is time for the group to take the stage. The girls head up there and we are getting a pretty good shot, a decent shot of the dance, which we've learned is called What Comes Around. What the hell was with this episode and us not learning about like where people were going, what dances were called until the rear end of the episode?
I mean, in future seasons, they announced it straight up.
As the dance goes on, Abby's voice cuts right through the music in a voiceover telling us that the only thing she could see on the whole stage was Maddie's pigtails were a little too low and that Peyton put the kick me sign on Maddie's back much too high. So no one can see it clearly. And now, instead of enjoying this wonderful dance, she's just sitting there cringing. You know, and of course, this means that instead of us getting to enjoy the wonderful dance, we're going to be sitting here listening to Abby complain about the thing that was, of course, A, completely avoidable, but B, like, really not that big of a deal. I rewatched the dance a couple of times and I'm like, you can still read the kick me sign, and even if you couldn't, like, the story of the dance kind of tells you what it is. Once again, this is another thing where, like, if Abby had had the girls practice with Maddie's hair done in pigtails and with the kick me sign, if she rehearsed this kind of thing, even just a few times during the week, completely avoidable. And Abby, that's your job as the teacher. The group dance ends with Abby defeating Peyton on stage and Jill telling us that normally she just loves to watch these girls dance together, but that this week, this particular dance did not stick with her. The only thing that stuck out to her was Peyton because she was so much taller than everyone else. And that even then, she's not all that sure that Peyton pulled off the role of the bully very well. We heard you before, Jill. We get it. You think Peyton's big and you think she's a big bully, and now you don't think she's a very good big bully. Shh. Move in silence.
Jill she's something else.
Back in the dressing room, Leslie is asking Peyton what she thinks Abby is going to say about her performance, and she particularly asks Peyton if she feels like she did better than Kendall. And when Peyton nods, Leslie says that she thinks that Peyton was better than Kendall too, and that she would be the one getting the ALDC jacket. And in this particular moment, I can't decide if Leslie and Jill are a match made in Dance Mom's Heaven or Dance Mom's Hell, because to me, this very clearly reads as like production got in Leslie's ear, and I am very sure they got in Jill's ear as well, and were like, make sure to, like, oh, I wonder who's gonna get the jacket. I wonder, like, do you think that, like, they were egging each other on just to see who would give the better soundbite. And I think in this case, it was Leslie.
I think Leslie was, and we see this in future episodes as well. I think Leslie is very easily swayed by production.
Yes, and we just saw like what Jill said about Peyton not being a very good bully. Like, obviously, these two do not take a lot of persuading to say terrible things about one another's children. Abby enters the room and immediately begins yelling at Peyton, saying that she nearly messed up the whole dance by putting the sign up way too high on Maddie's back, and this, of course, provokes Leslie to rightfully point out that Peyton wasn't the whole problem here, because she wasn't the one who was in charge of Maddie's hair.
Which is true, and she's probably old enough to, in that moment, look and adapt.
But I will say, this is where I think that and we never saw them rehearse with Maddie's hair and pigtails, and we never saw them rehearse with an actual sign. The times we saw them rehearse throughout, she's miming putting something on Maddie's back. So yes, the idea would be that she's old enough to look and adapt. And so because now she's way more focused on getting it to stick to Maddie, she's less focused on, oh, Maddie's hair's a little, I have to remember, Abby said if Maddie's hair's going to be in the way, I need to adjust. Like, she's way more focused on just making sure it sticks because she hasn't gotten to practice that.
That's why you always practice with the props.
Exactly. And who's in charge of that? Fucking Abby.
Not Leslie.
Not Peyton. Of course, however, the way that Leslie begins talking with Abby is not going to be conducive to Abby hearing any of what Leslie says. Not to mention, it's not very likely that Abby is going to correct Maddie or Melissa in any way, shape, or form when she could very squarely place the blame on someone else. So Leslie and Abby get into another one of their fantastic arguments where neither of them are really hearing anything the other person is saying, and they're only both hearing attack after attack after attack on themselves, and it is wholly exhausting for everyone in the room and everyone watching at home. Eventually, Abby asks Peyton how she thought she did in the performance, and Peyton gives an answer that is still a source of contention today. She says she thinks she did better than most of the people performance-wise. Now, I want to go over this particular phrase. She says, I think I did better than most of the people performance-wise. The people. Who are the people? Because this is where Peyton has gotten in so much trouble that she and her mother received death threats. Because Abby immediately follows this up because we hear Abby clarify, asking Peyton, oh, you think you did better than most of the people in this group? And Peyton doesn't nod. She just kind of looks blankly, and then realizing that she's not going to get out of this situation with her narcissistic dance teacher, she has to say something back, or Abby's not going to stop. She says, that's how I felt performance-wise. She just reiterates what she'd already said. But once again, she doesn't clarify. She doesn't say, I did feel that I did better than most of the people here. We don't see Abby say this, I will say. We don't see Abby say, you did better than most of the people in this group. We only see Abby ask Peyton how she thinks she did. And then, again, when Abby calls Peyton cocky, because what Peyton says is technically open to interpretation. She could have been saying because she was the lead of the group, she felt she did better than most of the other leads in their category, or that because she was the lead, she feels like she did better than most of the other people in their category, meaning that they're going to win. Who knows? She was 14. Oftentimes, if you ask a 14-year-old to say something that, like, to explain something that they were asked to say in a high-pressure situation, they don't know what the hell they meant, especially in front of someone like Abby. Many of the moms have said that they recall feeling like Peyton was saying that she did think she was better than their girls, and that many of their girls felt that way too.
And we know in particular, these producers were looking for every which way to alter and modify the things and the way that people said things and take things out of context.
Again, these are real people. Peyton's a real person. Leslie might be a walking, talking cartoon like Kathy, But her daughter works in the dance industry now. She was a real person. She was 14 years old. Leslie asks Abby if she thinks that everyone else was perfect then except for Peyton, and Abby says no. And so Leslie demands that she critique at least one other person. And Abby makes the joke that she doesn't have to critique them because Peyton did it for her. And I think this is kind of where, and again, I do not justify any of this. I don't condone any of this. I think this is where the death threats come from, because Abby continued to double and triple down. Abby knew what made for good TV, and Abby was also totally fine with making her kids feel like shit. Leslie tells us in an interview that all dancers feel like they're the best in the performance, which Rachel and I have been over. We don't agree with this. Like, this is 100% just a Leslie thing. But that most kids only think it, they don't say it. But Peyton was coerced in this moment, so she said it. Now, what Leslie is trying to say here is that every kid feels exactly how Peyton was painted to have felt here. That every kid goes out on stage, does the dance, and comes off stage and thinks that they were perfect, because that's what we're meant to think that Peyton was feeling here, which I don't think that's how Peyton was feeling. I don't think that's what Peyton meant.
I also think, I don't think Peyton was coerced in the way that Leslie means it. I think that Peyton...
She was backed into a corner and
said what she was thinking. Somebody verbally interpreted it to her, so she's hearing it and she's trying to process it, but because it's an adult who is seeking to take advantage of that moment, there's a shovel in her hand and she
can only dig down.
They're duct taping her hands to the shovel. So she did say it. I don't think she was coerced to saying it. I think she said it, and because, I mean, even we as adults who are 2 times her age, like, we'll say something and we're like, wait a second, that did not come out the way that I intended it to. Like, I had a thought and the words didn't match with the thoughts that I had. Let me take it back and rephrase it. She didn't get that opportunity.
Well, and think about, like, I am sure all of our listeners can think about a time when they were younger. They don't even have to be as young as Peyton, where you were in a moment where you said something where you were like, not exactly what I meant, hold on. But if you came back, the immediate, and we know Abby is this way, the immediate response is, do not talk back to adults. Don't tell me what I think. And Abby and Leslie have proved that they are both this kind of person. You can't tell them what they think. Anything other than agreeing with them is disrespect. Abby then tells us in her own interview that these girls have a really nice camaraderie between them. Like, all the kids on the team, they're super close. But Peyton broke that today, and it'll take a long time before any of them trust her again. And that she doesn't know if there's any apology that Peyton could give to them. That these are her friends, and what she did, it was bad and it was wrong. And this is one of those moments where, like, what Rachel has said to me before was, like, blaring in my ears. Like, every accusation is a confession from a narcissist. Because I'm like, Abby is always, like, trying to, like, when she feels like it, she's always trying to get closer to the girls, and she's always like, I don't know why they exclude me. I don't know why the moms exclude me. And it's like, because you're constantly doing things that are bad and they're wrong, and there is no apology you could give them. It would take years. We head to awards, and Abby tells us that she's nervous this week because the team was down one of its key members. They have 2 people on probation, one of which is completely new to the team and a foot taller than everyone else. Abby, no, wait. I was going to say, Abby, you're the one who brought her here, but then I have to remind myself. She didn't. That was production. Solos are called first, and while the show makes it look like Maddie is the only one who wins first place, she and Chloe were once again not in the same age category this week. Maddie took first in the junior division, while Chloe took first in the intermediate lyrical division. The show just can't tell us that, or they lose the Chloe versus Maddie plotline for the week. So instead, they make a big deal out of Chloe not winning her overall and tell us that Chloe didn't place at all, which is not true. She won her division. Abby goes on to tell us that Chloe didn't even place after she gave her the opportunity to be at the top of the pyramid, and that she needs reminding that you're only as good as your last performance. Her last performance was great. She won her division. Shut the fuck up, Abigail. The trio does not place, and Kelly tells us that she felt a bit relieved when the trio lost because at least now she can say that Abby should stick with what works. And this could sound bitchy or like mean to Kendall, but I really just think she was saying like Rachel and I have been saying this whole episode, there are certain groups that shouldn't be messed with.
There's a chemistry and a cohesiveness that comes with having a long-standing group. And this is one of the reasons, like Six on Broadway, they will do large cast turnovers all at one time so that they have that cohesiveness and that chemistry together, that just bringing one in or switching up one here or there, like that's not going to have the same, like it's going to feel a little off.
The group wins first in their category, but not in the overall, so the producers decide to go with the narrative that the group didn't place at all either, making everyone look like an on-screen loser.
However, because of the way that Hollywood Vibe was set up, they still qualified for nationals, and they basically got like a group scholarship to go to Hollywood Vibe nationals. And Nia also earned herself, even though we don't see that she had a solo or a dance, she got a Hollywood Vibe scholarship as well. So that's a big win.
Yeah, and I will say this particular episode, you can see girls running around in solo costumes we don't see. Like, Kenzie has hair pieces in her pigtails that we don't, for a solo, we never see. So it does not surprise me that Nia would have won herself a scholarship. Of course she would have had a solo we didn't get to see. Justice for Nia. Can't make her look good, because that's the thing, if she won a scholarship, she would have looked like a good dancer, and we cannot have Nia looking like a good dancer.
Hashtag end Nia erasure.
Yes, we can't have her looking like a good dancer on national TV. Back in the dressing room, Abby immediately starts yelling at Chloe about how she gave her a chance to be at the top of the pyramid and expects her to win in whatever age category she's in. And I cannot imagine how confusing this must have been for poor Chloe, because she did win. And the whole time, like, we catch glimpses of Chloe sitting on Chrissy's lap, and she's like, has a fist to her forehead, and she's like knocking her fist on her forehead. She looks vastly upset, but she doesn't look like crying upset. She looks disillusioned. And because Abby's saying all this stuff like, you're only as good as your last performance, and I gave you the chance and you threw it away, but she did win. And Chloe's only 10, so like, no wonder like she would have felt this way. Like, you're only as good as your last performance, but my last performance was good. I gave you this chance and you threw it away. You didn't win, but I did win. Like, What the fuck are you doing to this 10-year-old child?
It's a lot of, gaslighting. It's like, you might have won first in your group, but you didn't win first overall, so you're still not good enough, even though you got first.
Christy says that Chloe finally earned her way to the top of the pyramid, and Abby took the opportunity to say things to Chloe that were completely out of line, which is painted in a whole different light when you know things. Like, not only would those things not have been okay to say to a child if she just hadn't won it all, not okay, but she did, and this is fucking ridiculous. But Abby never says any of those things to Maddie when she's at the top of the pyramid. Abby confronts Peyton about her overinflated ego and asks her how that worked out for her. Another just disgusting thing. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, it's easy for us to view Peyton as the grown-up of the group here, because she is so much older than these girls, but, like, Peyton was still a little girl. She was either a freshman in high school or an 8th grader. She's still a little girl. And she's getting screamed at like this. I just want to take a moment of sadness for Peyton as well, her childhood particularly. Leslie immediately asks if Abby thinks that the group lost because of Peyton, and if Peyton will be able to dance with the team again. And Abby says that her main concern isn't with Peyton's performance on stage, it's with what happened backstage. And when Leslie begins to defend Peyton by saying that Abby flustered her, which I would say this isn't defense, this is like excuses. And also it isn't excusing Peyton, it's excusing their interpretation of Peyton. Peyton still has not gotten to speak for herself.
I feel like that's a pretty common thing with Leslie, though, is Peyton just doesn't get to speak for herself.
Yep, and we will get to that here in a minute, because it's going to become obvious that everyone's interpretation of Peyton, and again, we don't know what Peyton was really like at this time, but she was also 14. She's got a raging hormone. She's got to deal with Leslie and Abby on a nearly daily basis. Like, if she was sassy and a little bit bratty, like, that would be completely understandable, but we don't know that she was. But like the interpretation gets there.
The one time she speaks for herself, and she can't even speak for herself.
But this whole thing flusters Abby, and Abby begins to lose it a little. She tells Leslie that people pay her for her opinion, so she can say what she wants. She tells Peyton that she's still on probation, and then she tells us in an interview that Peyton's sassy little mouth, and she does this like head waggle when she says it. It's so disgusting. I hate when people talk. If you're 21 and under and someone talks about you like this, just know that I am angry on your behalf. It's disgusting. 22 and I'm still probably a little miffed. Anyway, Peyton's sassy little mouth may have just ruined her chances of ever getting on this team. As the moms are packing up, Holly lets Leslie know that Abby's still pretty mad at Peyton for what she said. Again, let's assume that the producers made the moms go over and talk to Leslie about this, but I'm still about to hate what's about to happen here. And Holly tells her that she kind of heard what Peyton said the same way that Abby did. Leslie, of course, becomes pretty upset at hearing Holly say that she thinks Peyton said something awful, and so she comes back and says, like, listen, Peyton already apologized, and you're still saying this to me? And when Holly says that, like, look, I haven't finished my comment yet, Leslie tells her she's not going to let her finish her comment because she's pissed off, and she can't believe that they don't accept apologies from 14-year-olds. Now, this is where things start to sound a little enably, right? Like, an apology is not always the same as making amends or actually, you know, like when you're teaching preschoolers or dealing with a little kid and you're like, I need you to apologize. You hit someone and they go, sorry. I'm not saying that that's what Peyton did, but like a sorry doesn't fix the problem. And Leslie's kind of insinuating here that because Peyton apologized, they all just need to move on. Where the moms potentially are coming here and being like, hey, this wasn't okay. And we want to understand. And Rachel, I wanted to know what you thought here, because it feels like the moms want to have a mostly normal conversation with Leslie here, and Leslie is accusing them, like, right back, just point blank, of all they're doing is not accepting Peyton's apology. Like, Leslie, has absolutely nothing to do with the whole thing. Like, the moms aren't coming to Leslie because, like, hey, you were part of this, and this whole thing doesn't feel very right.
Leslie cannot see her part in the problem, which is part of the problem. I mean, yes, you can absolutely accept an apology and forgiveness from a 14-year-old. Like, yeah, that's not our problem. But I think Leslie doesn't see how her behaviors are contributing to the situation. Like, she threw fuel onto the fire. The fire would have been fine. It would have been put out, but Leslie's like, let's just keep this thing going. And there's no diagnoses. We don't diagnose on this show.
Nope.
I wonder if there's some sort of like potentially like anxiety, or if she has her own traumatic upbringing. It definitely doesn't feel narcissistic in the same way, but there certainly feels like there's that codependency, that need to be needed, and creating situations where people need her. So codependency, for those who don't know, like when you have an addict, family member or friend, and they need you, and you have such a desire to be needed that you will continue enabling certain behaviors so that you can continue to feel needed. So I think that, especially because Peyton is 14, like she is old enough to start, she's going to be driving in 2 years.
Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Like she is mature enough. I mean, she could start babysitting if she could babysit Lil Mackenzie. I think Leslie isn't ready to let her kiddo grow up, and she sees these other little girls, and these other little girls still need their moms because they're 7 and 8 and 9 years old, and Leslie wants that. And so she'll kind of cultivate situations where she continues to be needed, and she doesn't see a problem with it.
Leslie begins yelling at one mom and then another mom until finally Abby comes back into the room saying that she could hear them all the way down the hall talking to a colleague. Leslie tells Abby that she's still upset, and Abby just tells her that if Peyton is as mature as they say she is, she has to fix her smart mouth. Now, while I'd like to agree with some of what Abby says, like, you do have to teach your children healthy communication skills. Abby, it's another one of those instances of Abby always wants what she can't have, right? Like she wants a kid to be taught how to speak well, because she hates when kids are too quiet and afraid of her and don't talk. But then the second a kid does talk to her, they've got a smart mouth. But she also, like, if the kid does talk, she wants the parent to immediately, like, she says right here, she says, I want you to dig your nails into Peyton's back and make her shut up. You want her to physically abuse Peyton to make her shut up. Of course, Leslie hears all this as an attack, which, like, partially it really, really is. And so she begins screaming back at Abby, who screams in return. And then the two are embroiled in yet another tit for tat while Peyton sits in the corner rocking. What a great job, teacher and parent. You're fostering such a nurturing environment for this tiny little seedling of a human. She's gonna be great. She's gonna be fine. This episode ends with Leslie telling the other moms that she doesn't think they'll have to put up with her for too much longer, and she'll be out of here. And then we are out of here. And I don't know, Rachel, like, what's your friggin' takeaway?
There's a lot of communication issues within this particular episode that are highlighted. I think within the trio, the nonverbal communication. And I do think that it's funny that Jill, of course, or not Jill, but Kelly is like, you know, I'm kind of glad that it didn't place, because it just means that you stick with what works. And while I can understand like the need to be flexible and be able to work with other people, there is a lot of nonverbal communication that happens in it's really not a high stakes environment, but to them, it is very high stakes. As elite dancers, it is very high stakes to them.
I think my takeaway is sometimes there are moments where your child, and I hope your child is never in this situation, but sometimes there are moments where your child is dealing with someone who is not safe to be talking around, and you do need them to, like, shh. Don't physically abuse them to get them to do that. But yeah, it's good to be back. We'll be back again soon with yet another episode, and hopefully we can just keep on trekking those out. Hooray! And hopefully life doesn't completely explode again for a very long while, because we can't keep it from happening, but we do appreciate you hanging around while it did. As always, this has been Kacie, not Rachel.
And this has been Rachel, not Kacie. I literally just had to read on the screen because I was like, what am I supposed to say?
We're doing great, as you can tell. Bye!
CBT in the TV is hosted by Rachel Sprague and Kacie Campbell. Our show is produced by Rachel Sprague, Kacie Campbell, and Yakov Paley. Editing by Yakov Paley. Our theme song was written, composed, and performed by Emily McNally. Please join us on Instagram and TikTok at CBT in the TV for even more fun and access to the resources mentioned in today's episode. Thanks for joining us.